Hello, and my name is Juanita Haynes, and I chose Dementia and its effects on memory loss for my final project. Before diving in, I wanted to briefly talk about what I learned about dementia from this class. Dementia is an acquired brain disease that progressively deteriorates one memory as well as other cognitive abilities such as language, judgment, abstract thinking, and executive functioning. The different types of dementia are associated with particular types of brain cells damaged in particular regions of the brain. For example, in Alzheimer's disease, high levels of certain proteins inside and outside brain cells make it hard for brain cells to stay healthy and to communicate with each other. Dementia is caused by damage to brain cells. This damage refers with the ability of brain cells being able to communicate with each other. When brain cells cannot communicate normally, thinking, behaving, and feelings can be affected. I also want to mention that dementia is also an umbrella term, meaning there are different types as well as there are different names. And one of the most common types of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. One of the first signs of dementia is memory loss. The brain region called the hippocampus is the center of the learning and memory in the brain, and the brain cells in this region are often the first to be damaged. That is why memory loss is often one of the earliest symptoms in dementia, and particularly Alzheimer's disease. There are different types of memory, but when it comes to breaking them down and putting them into two different groups, you can categorize them as short and long-term memories. With dementia, both short and long-term memory is affected. In the early stages, short-term memory is affected first, and as the disease progresses on, long-term memory begins to be affected. On the following slide, I will be discussing about three types of memories: systematic, episodic, and procedural memory. Systematic memory is a part of the declarative memory, which are memories that can be explained or declared. This type of memory refers back to the meaning or actions of words. An example would be understanding what the word memory means. It's your own personal dictionary, in other terms. Episodic memory is also a part of the declarative memory. It remembers specific events and other information related to one's experience. An example would be the memory of one's childhood event. And lastly, procedural memory. Procedural memory is not a part of the declarative memory. These memories include remembering specific tasks to accomplish a task. An example would be learning and knowing and remembering how to ride a bike. For this final project, I found 3 peer-reviewed articles on the topic dementia, Alzheimer's, and memory loss, and found them to be quite captivating. The first peer-reviewed article is known as the Coexisting Cholinergic and Hippocampal Degeneration, a key to memory loss in dementia and a challenge for transgenic models. The objective in this study is to examine the traditional lesions in Alzheimer's disease that affects the cholinergic basal forebrain, also known as CBF, and the transcentral region. The consequences from these traditional lesions produce an inconsistent measure of how much damage can be done to the memory. In other words, during this study, it was hard for them to determine how much damage is done to the memory because most of the participants varied. The methods used in this study included rats that had Alzheimer's disease with one or more traditional lesions present in the major parts of the brain regarding learning and memory. Continuing with the first peer review article, the results from the study conveyed that the cholinergic lesion, which is a type of traditional lesion, showed more consistently induced impairments in attention than memory, or it showed that there were some deficits on some learning tasks that was closely related to episodic memory. However, lesions made in the transcentral regions showed some memory impairment. But in conclusion regarding the study, the deterioration changes in the transcentral region and the CBF constitutes issues in the episodic memory with individuals with Alzheimer's disease. Moving on to the next peer review article called The Temporal Course and Pathologic Basis on Unawareness of Memory Loss in Dementia. This study objective was to characterize the natural history and neuropathologic basis of unawareness of memory loss in late life dementia. The methods used for this study include 2,092 individuals from 3 different clinics who had no memory or cognitive impairment in the beginning of the study were chosen, but they still had acquired dementia. The annual evaluations included clinical classifications in dementia plus self-ratings and performance tests on memory were methods also used. The participants had an annual clinical assessment included a medical history, a neurological examination, and test of memory and cognition. In addition, each evaluation included the participants being asked 2 questions about their memory. The first was, how often do you have trouble remembering things? The choices were often, sometimes, rarely, or never. The second question was, compared to 10 years ago, would you say your memory is much worse? The answer choices for this was a little, the same, a little better, or much better. Continuing with the second peer review articles, the results from the study included 2 subtests. In the first subtest, of 239 people who developed dementia, their episodic memory was stable until 2.6 years before their dementia onset. Thereafter, their memory awareness began to decline rapidly. In the other subtest of 385 people who died and underwent neuropathologic examination had episodic memory loss due to 12 tangles in gross cerebral infarcts, which are plaques that are in the brain that I remember we going over in class that damage the brain cells that pertain to memory. But in absence of these two pathologies, no decline in memory awareness was evident. So in conclusion to this study, it was found that awareness of memory impairment typically begins to decline about 2 to 3 years before dementia onset and is associated with tau tangles in gross cerebral infarcts. The final peer review article I chose was one of the more interesting things I learned about memory loss in dementia. The name of this article is Treating Memory Loss, Dementia, and Alzheimer's Disease. The objective in this study was to discuss the different methods used for treating memory loss in dementia and Alzheimer's disease. According to this article, it claimed that it is crucial for physicians to know their patient's medication because some prescription drugs can actually cause dementia. Typically, drugs used for treating Alzheimer's disease include ibuprofen and other anti-inflammatory drugs, which I had no idea that ibuprofen could be a benefactor when trying to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease. However, dementia caused by small strokes cannot be medically treated. One of the reasons why I really enjoyed this article is because it leaned more on towards how herbs can be a benefactor in treating Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and memory loss, that is associated with Alzheimer's disease and different types of dementia. However, even though it did mainly focus on the herbalization of things, it still mentions some supplements, and one of the supplements that it mentioned about was SAMe. And SAMe is a supplement best known for its treatment on depression and chronic pain. Researchers have indicated that SAMe have a positive effect on brain cells. SAMe supports a protein called methylation, which, if impaired, leads to brain deterioration. SAMe also boosts the production of a lipid that is important for both mood and memory, as well as reducing inflammation. The herbs mentioned in this article each had a particular effect on regards of the brain, memory, depression, dementia, or Alzheimer's. The first herb we're going to be discussing is the ginkgo. The ginkgo is the world's oldest living tree species. It has been found to be helpful in symptoms of cerebral vascular insufficiency, including short-term memory loss and depression. The next one, salvia, which is a red sage fruit, is traditionally used for calming measures. Salvia, used as a formula, increases the circulation for mental thinking and depression. And lastly, Huperzine A has been recorded to over 100,000 people and used to treat Alzheimer's, mostly in China though. It is a compound that can be manufactured in a lab or extracted from club moss. Researchers at Shanghai Institute of Material found that huperzine showed improvements in memory, cognitive, and behavioral functions in dementia. In conclusion, from this article, it was said that herbs may be able to play a promising role in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease and other conditions involving poor memory and dementia. This also concludes my final project on dementia and the effects it has on memory. I truly did enjoy this class. It was one of my favorite classes, and I look forward to studying this further in depth in grad school.